Okay, true believers, welcome to the freedom to draw unsolved mysteries. Today's case is an unexplained death from the mid 70s. And this has been in the news as of late because it has been solved. But the mystery in this case is, how did the authorities let this murderer go on to murder again? It seems like authorities dropped the ball in this case. In the case of Carol Sue Klaber. We know who killed her, but how did the authorities not catch the killer? That's the mystery here, folks. We're having some technical problems here. We're live. We're going to tell you about this young woman, this teenager from 1976. She was living in Kentucky at the time. Her name was Carol Klaber, and she was killed by a man named Thomas Dunham, W. Dunham. But the mystery in this case, even though it is solved, how did the authorities let him slip through the cracks and kill again? This is a 46-year-old murder investigation into the death of a northern Kentucky teenager. It has been solved. It was an unexplained death, according to the Boone County Sheriff's Office. Officials said Thomas Dunaway, originally of Park Hills, Kentucky, is believed to have killed 16-year-old Carol Sue Klaber in 1976. Dunaway was 19 years old at the time of the killing, though he died in December of 1990 at the age of 33. And this is a picture of him right here. They did get a good police sketch of him. In my opinion, looks a lot like him. So it leads to the question, how did they drop the ball in this case? And what happened to Carol Sue Klaber? Klaber left her parents' Fort Wright home around 5:30 p.m. on June 4th, 1976 to have dinner at Zeno's Hyde Park restaurant, according to the 1977 Post article. She had gone bike riding earlier that afternoon, and a neighbor said that she returned with a young man who was driving a two-tone car. The article states a Pontiac. That was where you would go to socialize, is the park. And she was at the park earlier that day. And that's where she went to meet people and her friends. And she met a guy at the park earlier that day. Yeah, we're having technical problems. The music's going to be going on and off. There's nothing I can do about it. She went into her home, came out several minutes later, got into the man's car, and they drove off together. That she met that man earlier in the day at the park, and she had gone bike riding, and he was said to be tall, slender, blonde hair, just like the picture of the killer. And they had a good witness police sketch of the guy. In my opinion, looked a lot like him. Klaber's body was then discovered the next day in a ditch along Chambers Road, about 1.5 miles east of Route 25, U.S. route near Walton, Kentucky. The article states she had been beaten and strangled, with police at the time saying evidence pointed to her being killed at a different location. Officials say there was also evidence of a sexual assault. Klaber was a junior at Dixie Heights High School, where she played violin in the school's string ensemble. The Post reported she was described as being popular with her classmates. Definitely having technical problems here. I apologize. How was Dunaway identified? It took 47 years for him to be identified. Investigators submitted DNA evidence from the crime scene to a third-party company called Othram Incorporated for genealogy testing. Officials said that company was able to build a comprehensive DNA profile and produce leads for investigators to follow. The company notified Sheriff's Office in January that its genealogy investigation was complete, and detectives were able to positively identify Dunaway through a follow-up investigation. This guy's name is Thomas Dunaway. Probably going to want to note his name because his name's probably going to come up again, because it is rumored that they are going to exhume his body and put him in the CODIS system. Now this means once they get his body exhumed and they have the DNA from him, they're going to put that into the criminal CODIS system, and they're going to run it again and see if his match comes up with any other unexplained deaths, unexplained homicides in this Kentucky area. So Thomas W. Dunham, remember that name. It's probably going to pop up in the news again. True crime fans, most likely, because this guy, once he was done killing this girl, he enlisted in the army, then went AWOL, then came back to the same Boone County and killed a guy. And then he admitted to that. But who knows how many he killed before that. This Carol Klaber probably was not his first victim. That's what I think anyway. Since the Sheriff's Office launched its cold case unit in 2017, detectives had previously ruled out 2 other potential suspects. Yeah, they were interviewing guys and they were totally off. Did Dunaway have a criminal past? Detective Coycox said Dunaway had been on a 6-month crime spree, and that he had a pattern of committing crimes and ditching the cars he'd driven the time those crimes occurred. So that's what I'm saying, guys, is how many people did he kill in that 6 months crime spree that the detective is talking about? They did do their job, and they never gave up, and you got to give them credit for that. But the murderer was able to go on and murder many more times. In my opinion, they only caught him for one. Detective Dunaway was convicted of murder in another Boone County killing that happened a little more than 6 months after Klaber's death. According to Cox, officials said 19-year-old Ronald Townsend was found with several gunshot wounds on December 17, 1976. Cox said Dunaway was later arrested, confessed, pleaded guilty, and was ultimately sentenced to life in prison in connection with the Townsend killing, though he was released just 7.5 years later, guys. So he killed 2 people now that we know of, and only did time 7.5 years. 2 murders, 7.5 years. I'm not going to say anything on that. We'll let you guys be the judge of that. Be the judge of that. Only did 7.5 years. That is amazingly frustrating. Just like this music is frustrating. Klaber and Townsend were both left in plain view, just inches from the roadway, Cox said, adding the locations where they were discovered are just less than 6 miles apart. And I'm sure he did more. This isn't something that you just go and do on a whim. He had done this before, in my opinion. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for his name. His name is probably going to pop up again. Investigators discovered Dunaway was AWOL from the U.S. Army when Townsend was shot. He enlisted 9 days after he killed Carol Klaber. Klaber's body was found and was sent to Fort Knox, south of Louisville, before being sent to Fort Carson, Colorado. Dunaway bought a 2-tone 73 Chevrolet Monte Carlo in May 76. Cox said as soon as he got to Fort Carson, Dunaway traded the Monte Carlo for an orange Chevrolet Vega. Detectives investigating Townsend's murder issued an attempt to locate for Dunaway and the Vega. Officials said on Christmas Eve 1976 he was arrested in South Carolina on charges of arson and possession of a legal firearm. Law enforcement in South Carolina found Dunaway burning a Chevrolet Impala, and he had a sawed-off shotgun. Cox said, adding investigators learning Dunaway traded the Vega for the Impala. How did this man know Carol Klaber? Though investigators aren't entirely certain how Dunaway and Klaber knew each other, Cox said Dunaway lived half a mile from DeVoe Park, where Klaber would often ride her bike. They probably met at the park. He was an older guy, probably interested in him. Her being young and naive, you could totally see it happening. Detective said Klaber was a very social person and she would often talk to people there. That's possibly how they met, Cox added. He said the two also attended Erlanger Ellesmere schools when they were younger, and it's possible they knew each other from their time in that district. What happens with the case now? Pretty much nothing, because the guy's dead. So Dunaway can't be posthumously indicted. Boone County Commonwealth's attorney Lewis Kelly said a formal letter has been submitted to prosecutors stating that he would have been charged with murder in connection with Klaber's death were he still alive. Too little, too late. Klaber's older brother, who was the family member to identify her body, was notified that detectives identified the suspected killer after more than 40 years, Cox said. Dunaway's remains were exhumed so his DNA can be entered into a national database, officials say. So, yes, they were talking about doing it, and I guess they actually did do it. So, yes, his name's probably going to come up again because I'm certain that this was not the only. Certain he's probably murdered more than 2 times. He was probably a serial killer that never got caught. Got away scot-free. The mystery here, folks, is how in the world did he get away with this scot-free like he did? They had a great sketch of him. It is a tragedy that they did not catch him, because then he went on to murder that other guy, this young innocent girl. I want to say that this was not his first. I'm betting that this was not his first murder, so there's probably 1 or 2 more out there that are connected with this guy. And his name is going to come up again, I guarantee it. So that does it for this, folks, guys. Sorry about the audio problems, but we're live, we don't edit. So that does it for this case, guys. True believers, this is the case of Carol Klaber. It has been solved. Peace out.